It's pretty hard to dispute the present. We are able to experience and analyze things that can then be used to make conclusions about the world we live in. However, it is much more difficult to learn about the past and try to explain how things developed into what we see today. There are two prevailing theories that attempt to define the origin of us and the universe: evolution in concurrence with the Big Bang, and creation. There is a lot of evidence that supports both of these ideas, as well as glaring problems that firmly plant these ideas as theories as opposed to facts. Let's start at the beginning, like the very beginning, of everything. We'll identify the position that most evolutionists would agree with first, which holds the idea that everything came into existence from a singular explosion some 13.7 billion years ago known as the Big Bang, creating all organized matter like stars and planets, and being responsible for how the universe behaves, defining the laws it now obeys like the law of conservation of mass and the functionality of DNA, which is essential for all living things. Contrary to what many would believe, the creation model looks somewhat similar to the previous model. Scientists just classify the same evidence as supporting one way or another. In terms of creation, the Bible explicitly states that God spoke the world into existence at one point in time, or rather, the beginning of time. Just like the Big Bang, the creation model argues that everything came into existence at one time, but that the method used and the origin of natural laws and the basis to understand genetic information came from an omnipotent creator. Despite these distinct disagreements, both models suggest an origin that supersedes our observation and current understanding of how the universe functions. Take the cell theory, for example. It states that cells can only arise from other pre-existing cells, a standard that neither model follows. They also fail to adhere to the already mentioned law of conservation of mass, stating that matter cannot be created nor destroyed. So far, neither belief seems very plausible, even though they are accepted by many as an accurate explanation of the origin of the universe and everything in it. Nevertheless, let's examine the process by which these theories claim the world has developed up to today. This time we'll begin with creation. In Genesis chapter 1, God created the earth, first as a composite of water alone in space on day 1. On the second day, he separated the sky from the water, and on the third day, he made dry ground appear, as well as vegetation. God created the stars, and alludes to the sun and moon, calling them a greater light to govern the day and a lesser light to govern the night, on the fourth day. On the fifth day, he created sea creatures to inhabit the ocean and flying creatures to inhabit the sky. And on the sixth day, the final day of creation before rest, God created land animals according to their kinds and man in God's image. This origin story provides an explanation for the earth having an atmosphere and its surface being covered mostly by water. It is supported by what we see today, that animals were created as separate kinds instead of evolving over time. In contrast, evolution advocates claim that the Earth formed from residual materials that lined the Sun after the star's creation. Over time, particles combined to form the Earth's core and eventually the remainder of the planet. Scientists assume that comets and asteroids crashing into the Earth delivered all the water on the planet today. Then, amino acids developed on Earth from atoms combining in specific circumstances and being charged by some kind of activation energy like lightning, creating primordial life, which is unlikely due to the circumstances required, but possible. Through the processes of adaptation, natural selection, and mutations, organisms evolved over millions of years into the animals and plants we see today. The fossil record is further evidence of this, showing layers of creatures, with seemingly older ones at the bottom like trilobites, followed by dinosaurs, and at the top, humans. However, it is possible to argue that if a worldwide flood occurred as the Bible claims, it would make sense that oceanic creatures like trilobites would have been engulfed by the flood and buried way below sea level. Dinosaurs would then have been buried on land, and humans, being more intelligent, would have sought higher ground to avoid the floodwaters. They are both possibilities, but either way, here we are. Earth's past, however it occurred, is accountable for our present situation. And, to answer this mysterious question of origins, scientists continue incessantly searching for the answer. Until then, both evolutionists and creationists will have to have faith in their feeble attempts to explain the past in a world replete with questions.